Hi, everybody. It's Susie Chang. Good to see all of you out there. I'm glad to see we've got people coming in from everywhere, and I'm happy to see all of you, at least your little names and faces going up and down. So today I'm going to do a very sort of brief crash course on planetary magic and tarot, which is sort of a favorite thing of mine. And as you know, if you follow any of my books, correspondences are kind of an obsession for me. But what I'm going to talk about today is just a brief introduction to kind of the way that planetary correspondences work in traditional tarot, and the ways that you can integrate that into your own tarot practice. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share my screen and do a little slideshow for you. Let us see. Very happy to see that students from the Living Tarot course are showing up here. Welcome. All right. So what you should be seeing here, I hope, is my opening slide, Planetary Magic and the Tarot. And what I want to talk about, first of all, is the fact that whatever tarot deck you use, whether it's, a very modern deck or an older deck, as long as it's based in the Rider-Waite-Smith, as long as it's one of those tarot decks from the modern English-speaking world dating after 1909, then it's going to have something to do with the Golden Dawn correspondences. So this is going to be kind of a quick overview of astrological correspondences in Golden Dawn based decks. For a lot of you, this is going to be review, but for others, perhaps it will be new. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about how we can ritualize these correspondences and make them work for us in daily life. I am not going to be seeing the chat at all while I'm doing this presentation, so bear with me. I will try to do this quickly enough that we have time for about 10 minutes of questions and answers at the end. And then I will be looking and responding and trying to address any questions you may have. All right, so planetary magic and the tarot. So what we do here is we're going to talk about two things that have to do with correspondences. One, we're going to talk about what they are within the tarot and how to live in relationship to those planetary manifestations within tarot. And then the other thing we're going to do is talk about how to draw the skills and attributes of the planets into our daily life so that we can integrate them into our own sort of everyday approach to problems, to challenges, to opportunities, and make them part of us. Hopefully, although this will be a review for many of you, the correspondences, it will hopefully have something for those of you who already have a praxis going with planetary correspondences, and sometimes it's just nice to see how someone else packages the even familiar material that you use every day. Anyway, so let us begin. We're going to start by talking about the planets themselves, and every card in the Golden Dawn system, in all 78 cards of the tarot, has an astrological correspondence, whether it's zodiacal or elementary or planetary. So, but this is a little talk on planetary magic, so we're going to talk about the 7 planets first. Now, when I say 7 planets, of course, I'm talking about the 7 traditional planets. So meaning Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Sun. And we're always going to sort of bear in mind that order, even though, there are different ways of thinking of the orders of the planets, and there are certainly different planetary structures, including the outer planets, the astronomical way of looking at the planets. But we're going to go this way. And what's more, most of the time in this talk, we're going to start not from Saturn, but from Mars. So you have to imagine moving that whole line of parent planets to the left so that we're starting with Mars. And I will actually talk a great deal about this order, where it comes from, and why we use it. But for now, we're going to start there. There are, in the major arcana of the tarot, 7 planetary major arcana. The first one being, the dreaded Tower, which corresponds to Mars. The next one being the Sun, which obviously enough corresponds to the Sun. The next one is the Empress, which corresponds to Venus. The next one is the Magician, which corresponds to Mercury. The next one is the High Priestess, which corresponds to the Moon. Then we have the World, which corresponds to Saturn. And finally, we have the Wheel of Fortune, which corresponds to Jupiter. Okay, so that's the sort of overview of what you will be expecting to see when you talk about planets and majors. And you can just work with those 7 major arcana in your planetary practice, and that could work perfectly fine, but we're going to go deeper than that. So in addition to the 7 planets, we have, of course, the 12 signs of the zodiac. And 12 because, of course, if you know your traditional astrology, you have 5 planets ruling 2 signs each, but the sun and the moon each rule 1. So, for example, remember we said that Mars corresponds to the Tower. Then, of course, we're going to talk about Aries, which is ruled by Mars, and also Scorpio, which is traditionally ruled by Mars, although in the modern system, many people consider it to be ruled by Pluto, co-ruled by Pluto. Then we have the Sun, which is, of course, the ruler of Leo, which corresponds to the Strength card. Then we have the Empress, which corresponds to Venus, which then rules over the Hierophant, corresponding to Taurus, and Justice, corresponding to Libra. Okay. And then we have my favorite, the Magician, corresponding to Mercury, ruling over Gemini, which is the Lover's card, and Virgo, which is the Hermit card. Then on to the Moon, which rules over Cancer, which corresponds to the Chariot card. And then we have Saturn, which corresponds to the World, ruling over Capricorn, the Devil card. Love you, Capricorns out there. And the Star, which corresponds to Aquarius. So, and oh, yes, we still have Jupiter. So that's Jupiter corresponds to the Wheel of Fortune, which may seem fairly obvious. And then again, we have Temperance, which corresponds to Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. And then the Moon, which is confusing because why doesn't the Moon rule over the Moon? But no, the Moon corresponds to Pisces in traditional Golden Dawn astrology correspondences and is ruled by Jupiter traditionally. Although in the modern idiom, we might say it's ruled by Neptune. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit now about that order again, just because it's so important to understand in traditional astrology and in tarot. Again, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. That is known as descending or Chaldean order. Now, as if you're in tune with modern astrology, you probably think first of the sun and moon and rising, then you think of the inner planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, and then you think of Jupiter and Saturn, and then maybe you even go on and you think of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. But what the ancients did was they thought primarily about these 7 luminaries, and always in this order. And the reason they thought about them in this order from Saturn to Moon is because of the following. Now, they imagined that the Earth was at the center of these 7 concentric spheres. The Moon was closest to us, and then Mercury, then Venus, then the Sun, then Mars, then Jupiter, and then Saturn. Saturn being the slowest and oldest, the slowest of the 7 planets. So, and they're ordered by how fast they apparently seem to go around the Earth. Here, I'm going to show you my cool little animation that I did. Whee! So as you can see, it takes Saturn the longest time to go around. And the moon just whizzes around in the center very fast. So now, of course, we know that this geocentric model is not the way things really are. Earth is not at the center of the universe. Nevertheless, it's still the way that we perceive the universe. We still see the moon as closest. We still see Saturn as farthest away. So there's a logic. It's not completely arbitrary to continue using this system, which was used literally for like 700 years, from medieval times through the 1700s until the Enlightenment came. This is what any astrologer would have been familiar with in the West. Okay, so that's signs and planets. Let's talk about decans. So there are 36 decans. Decans, of course, are each 1/3 of a zodiacal sign, 10 degrees of the zodiac. And therefore, we can correlate them to the minor arcana of the tarot. If you take out the aces and set them aside and deal only with the 2 through 10 minors, then you have 36 minor cards, and there happen to be 36 decans. Perfect. Matchy match. This is my favorite diagram in the whole world, and it's like in all of my books. So you can see in the inner ring, you can see the 12 zodiacal signs, and then in the outer ring, you can see the 36 minor cards. If you start on the left, you can see the 2, 3, and 4 of wands, then the 5, 6, and 7 of pentacles, and so on and so forth, all the way around the edge. So minor arcana correspond to decans. And what you'll notice in between the zodiacal signs in the center and the minor arcana on the outside, you'll notice a ring of little planets. And that's because each of the 3 decans is ruled by one of the planets. So not only do you have a planet governing a sign, you have a planet governing a third of the sign, the decan. And so you'll see the first 3 decans of Aries on the left there, just below the ascendant. That's Mars, Sun, and Venus. Mars ruling Aries 1, Sun ruling Aries 2, and Venus ruling Aries 3, the 2, 3, and 4 of wands. So that's these 3. Okay, so you have a connection from the planet, Mars, the Tower card, the sign, Aries, the Emperor card, and then the 2, 3, and 4 of wands as the 3 decans of Aries. However, the only decan that happens to be ruled by Mars is the first one, 2 of wands. Okay, so you can already extrapolate from here that we're going to have a number of minor cards that are related to each planet. And the one that the one in that you can see here is obviously Mars. And Mars is special because it has 6 decans associated with it, just because the zodiacal new year starts and ends with Mars. That's why in this whole sort of, order I've been presenting, always starting with Mars. So the other planets, or planets in quotation marks, like the sun, only have 5. And they're sort of evenly distributed over the decans over the course of the zodiacal year. I'm going to show you something very nerdy right now. I debated whether to even include it, but it's kind of fun, which is something I did with the 3 majors and 6 decanic minors of Mars. it's just this is the Orphic hymn to Ares, which happens to have 9 lines, and if you break them up in order, going from uh, the emperor, the death card, and the tower, and then through the 6 minors, you will see that every line just happens to completely coincidentally line up with the sense of those cards. It's a bit eerie and uncanny, but it's just kind of fun. So that's the sort of thing I do when I'm bored. Um, anyway, so let's talk a little bit about planetary ritual. Planetary ritual is a devotional thing that you can do at any time, and it is the basis of doing planetary magic. So we start with planetary ritual, getting used to observing the planets every day of the week. And then we move on to planetary ritual. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about, because in astrology, timing is very important always, is when do you do planetary ritual, as well as what and how. But let's talk about when for a moment. And the bad news is that, well, the best time to do planetary ritual is when the sun comes up, which is, not my favorite time of day. I'm not a person who likes to get up at sunrise. Nevertheless, if you do, fantastic. The first planetary hour of the day always falls at sunrise, and which typically will take you to around 6 in the morning, depending on the time of year, which is not my time of day. Um, Nevertheless, if you're the kind of person who loves getting up at 6 in the morning, then first planetary hour, planetary ritual is your thing. All right. So what day and what hour? The day, you already know what day goes with what planet. You already know that the sun goes with Sunday, that the moon goes with Monday. And then if have been interested in delving into the mythological origins of the dates of the week at all, then you know that Mars is Tuesday, Mercury Wednesday, Jupiter's Thursday, Venus is Friday, and Saturn is obviously Saturday. But what's beautiful about this thing is that you notice that if you go around from Mars or from Saturn, in a counterclockwise direction, you'll see that we've got Chaldean order. We've got descending order: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. But if you start, say, from Sunday, since it's Sunday, and you follow the arrows, then you go Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, which I think is just the most elegant thing in the world. Years later, I still love it. Anyway, mind blown. Okay, so let's talk. That's days of the week. So you're gonna observe the sun. You're gonna do sunrise on Sunday. Hours of the day. Okay, so you're going to use planetary hours. We have 24 hours normally in the day, clock hours. Planetary hours are different from clock hours. The daylight planetary hours, there are 12 of them, and there are 12 nocturnal planetary hours. But instead of being 60 minutes long, what you do is you take, for the planetary hours of the day, you take all of the time from the sun rises to the sun sets, and you divide that in 12. And then you take all the time from sunset to sunrise, and you divide that in 12 for the hours of the night. Therefore, right now, when we're just at the summer solstice, the planetary hour is going to be about 66 minutes long. It's longer than normal. Only at the equinoxes are the planetary hours exactly 60 minutes long. So as you can see, at the beginning of each day, there's an hour devoted to that day's planet, a 66-minute hour right now. And that is the time to do ritual. However, you do get 2 more chances if you can't get up in the morning. In the 8th hour of every day, you're going to again see that that planet has an hour, and again in the 15th hour of the day. Right. What do you do when you set up your altar? Well, you fill it with correspondences, and these can be of all different kinds. Um, you can have perfumes, you can have minerals, you can have gemstones, you can have food, plants, animals, numbers. Um, those are just a small number of the materia that you can put on your altar. You can also try and use things that symbolize more abstract ideas like religion or communication or love or whatever it is. But the point is that everything in the world corresponds to one of these 7 planets. So you actually have a lot of choices. That is how you decide what to put on a planet's altar. Just for fun, I took a picture of a mercurial altar of mine. And, if you're like me, you make an altar and you're like, it never looks like it's full enough. It never seems like I've done enough. There's definitely a magician's inferiority complex, which we all struggle with. But there's actually quite a lot going on here. There's there's natural correspondences in here. There's figurative correspondences. There's smells. There's a spell. There's a lot going on. There's dimes in there. So basically, you throw everything you can at it and hope that the god in question notices. Okay, so now I'm just going to very quickly go through some of the things that you can ask for while your altar is up. Every planet, of course, as we've said, has 3 major arcana associated with it: the planetary major and the 2 zodiacal majors. Then there are 5, or in the case of Mars, 6 minor arcana. You can work with any of these, any of the majors or minors. Some are easier to work with than others. uh, but even the 9 of Swords has something to offer. But you may wish to work with something. If you're working with Mars, you may want to work with the 3 of Pentacles, which is one of the absolutely friendliest and most productive Mars placements, because it's Mars ruling Capricorn. It's exalted. Mars happens to be exalted in Capricorn. And if you wish to invite the power of productivity, of focus, of determination, of the will to succeed into your life, you could do worse than to work with the 3 of Pentacles. Just very quickly, the 8 of Pentacles is a wonderful way to work with the Sun. The 2 of Cups, otherwise known as the Lord of Love, wonderful way to work with Venus. The 6 of Swords, the ultimate problem solver, great way to work with Mercury. Everyone loves the High Priestess for the Moon, but you could also do worse than work with the Lord of Success when you're trying to get a job or something like that. Then for Saturn, in fact, there is something you can do with Saturn. You can work with the star. There are others, but I like the star because it speaks to the idealism of Saturn, which is not one of its most commonly noticed qualities. And then finally, we have the literal card of wishes, the 9 of Cups, which is the best way that you can work with Jupiter, in my opinion, though you can certainly work with all of the others. All right, so hopefully I've given you some ideas of how to work planetary magic with your tarot cards. It's a lot of information. You may want to know if there's a place you can just look this stuff up. And yes, there is. My first book from Llewellyn, known as Tarot Correspondences, or the Fortune's Wheelhouse podcast, which has an episode on every single card, or my most recent book, which is essentially the podcast between hardcovers, which co-authored with Mel Meline, card by card, a huge amount of information, esoteric information on every card. My book on the minors, 36 Secrets, very helpful if you want to take a Decan walk. I also, of course, have these other products which you may be interested in: custom zodiacal perfumes, arcana cases for your decks, and finally, I have a course on tarot which you can take, which is a very practical course as opposed to being steeped in the esoterics. And that is actually going to be my next book from Llewellyn, coming out early next year in, I think, January, February. And that will be called The Living Tarot. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I am here to answer your questions. I will have a look at the chat and tell me what you would like to know at this point if you have any questions. And thank you for all the supportive remarks about the books. I'm glad that people are using them. And okay, so Foolish Fish, the Aurum Solis have a different order for the planets around the heptagram. They use the Chaldean order as you follow the lines. Oh, I see. That's cool. Do I happen to know the origin? I do not, Foolish Fish. I do not know the origin of the order I showed in the heptagram, but if I ever find out, I will be sure to tell you. And if you find out, please let me know. Okay, Amanda has a question. Let's see. I mentioned using an altar to get a god's attention. Is that quite literally what you're doing when putting together an altar? The short answer is yes. Basically, every day I have a slightly different planetary altar to work with the god in question, and hopefully to cultivate a smoother relationship with those gods. And so, yes, I recommend that you give that a try. Let's see. Any other questions at this point? Okay, so well, let me know if you do. But yes, I found that that's a really great way to work with electional astrology as well. So if you happen to follow, for example, the astrology podcast, and there's a really great day planetary election, something that's great for Jupiter matters or something like that, you can certainly, take your Wheel of Fortune card and add that to your working, or any of the Jupiter related cards you like. And let's see, I see a question from Christina. Do you cast spells or assert intentions at your altar? Yes, every single day. Every single day at my altar, I do devotional ritual to the planets, and then I draw my cards. I integrate it with my card of the day practice. And then when I get my cards, today I happen to get the Emperor and the World card. This is from the Fairy Tale Tarot. I write a spell to go with it. And the spell for today is Sovereign of all I'm seeing, bringing new worlds into being. So that's a way of, I like 2-line spells because I can memorize them, and it makes it easy to work with the planet. And by the way, this is a Jupiter talisman bracelet based on the 9 of Cups, which you can't really see, but which I made during Jupiter electional. Let's see. Any thoughts on the relationship of the elements to the astrological signs? Yes, lots of thoughts. Thank you, Shaunathan. So if you're interested, I have many thoughts on them. If you're interested, I have on my website, tsusanchang.com, there's a downloadable called 4 Stories of the Tarot, which is entirely based on the 4 elements, how they play out, their different stories, how they tell them in the tarot, and how the cards support that, and the myths and stories you can associate with them. Let's see. I have a question from Chris. Is there any particular reason why the planets occupy the decans that they do? Yes. It does have to do with with that Chaldean order. So starting from Mars in the zodiacal new year, it simply goes around in that order. I have a question from Evelyn. Will you be doing a ritual book? Maybe someday. I haven't decided yet. Della, does the altar change daily? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I put all kinds of different things on the altar every day. Let's see. Amanda asks, what other tarot decks do you work with? I actually change tarot decks every 10 days. As far as reading for people goes, I primarily will use Rider-Waite-Smith because that's what people want. But I do all sorts of, I'll use, dozens of tarot decks over the course of a year. It gives you an excuse to collect them. Then I have a question here from Kara Marziali. Is there a reason you include dimes at your altar? Yes, that was specifically for Mercury, because historically Mercury, dimes, they used to be imprinted with Mercury. Amanda asks, do you find that this kind of meticulously organized working is suited to is suited to specific kinds of people / signs? Probably, yeah. I happen to be a Virgo. I really do love this kind of matchy match stuff. But honestly, I think that magic comes in all forms and and styles. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. Christina, how do you recommend to start using the planets in tarot? This is the way I suggest that you do it. Just set up an altar to the planet and put the associated cards there and get to know them. And Megan asks, I think this will have to be the last question. Would your first book be the best for beginners? Actually, I would suggest that you start with Tarot Basics. If you're an absolute beginner, Tarot Basics is not a book, but a video on my website. But then, yes, if you like correspondences, by all means, get yourself a copy of Tarot Correspondences. Oh, it looks backwards. Get yourself a copy of that if you like. If you like these correspondences, if you like an immense amount of well-organized card by card information, including a lot of Kabbalah, a lot of mythological information and so forth. You want tarot deciphered. And if you really want to do a deep dive on the minors, you want 36 Secrets. Okay, thanks everybody. This has been a whirlwind, but it's been a ton of fun. Thank you for coming, and stay in touch. tsusanchang.com.